31st of January 1933, Berlin. The grand city of Berlin lies milky in the morning light. Amid the avenues and alleyways, the tram stops and department stores, a little girl by the name of Rosa Klein hurries through the freezing air to buy some rolls for breakfast. She turns onto the Wilhelmstrasse, a trail of vapour from her mouth lingering in the air beneath a canopy of tram cables, and, a little breathless, reaches the konditorei and heaves at the heavy door. A little bell chimes, and a cloud of delicious, moist scent blossoms into the street, floating like a blessing towards the dogs scrounging in the gutters. Rosa enters the bakery, a Reichsmark note clenched in her fist like an autumn leaf, brimming with pride. She's not usually allowed out alone, after all, she's only 9. But there's not a crumb of bread in the entire apartment, and she was awake anyway. And Mama decided that it's time for her to spread her wings, or at least start to unfurl them. In the Aladdin's cave of browns and golds, with mirrors multiplying her every move, Rosa Klein approaches the counter. The steely-eyed Fräulein in a black and white uniform cocks her head curiously, twisting a paper bag in pink, chapped fingers. Rosa smiles politely, but no such smile is returned. Instead, the Fräulein arranges the Mandeltorte, shuffles the Apfelkuchen, and wipes down the surfaces which are already spotless. Only then does she acknowledge the little girl in the blue felt hat, raising her eyebrows the tiniest of fractions. Rosa smiles understandingly, for the Fräulein is clearly a very busy lady, asks for a dozen Schrippen rolls and presents her Reichsmark note. The Fräulein speaks not a word as she slots the rolls into a bag, places them on the counter and activates an ornate cash register, which rattles, whirs, and produces a single ring. Then suddenly she says, "Wait a moment," and reaches for her lapel, where there glints a small golden pin. A deft movement of her fingers brings it away from the fabric, and she places it on the counter, gesturing for the girl to take it. Rosa, confused, accepts the gift, enacts an awkward bow, and makes her way to the door. She heaves it open, the bell chimes again, and a bracing gust of air freshens her face. She responds to the Fräulein's salute by mumbling "Heil Hinten," as her big brother Heinrich taught her, then hurries from the konditorei, clutching the Schrippen, into the wintry, watery light. As she runs home with the Schrippen in her satchel and the lapel pin cold in her palm, and her curls bounce like the hair of a clown from beneath her blue felt hat with the big flower on the side which Papa says butterflies will land on come summer, a shadow passes across Rosa's face. How clean the bakery was, how spotless. It made her feel dirty just for being there, just for breathing, just for having hair, just for being composed of flesh and blood, rather than perfect surfaces and pure, moist bread. As for the Fräulein, well, she fitted right in, cool as the stainless steel trays, manipulating the loaves with fingers mercury cold, her white cap like an ice cap upon the undulating straw-coloured waves, her apron white and starched and stiff against the creaseless black of her skirt. Yes, that bakery is beginning to seem a little sinister, and so, come to think of it, is the Fräulein. Although it isn't so nice to think like that. She should always think the best of everybody, or that's what Mama says, at least. As she turns onto the grand boulevards of Tiergarten and her nose grows pink and chilly, she feels a little confused, because the symbol on the pin in her palm has appeared all over Berlin since yesterday. In practically every window it stares, an angry swirl, spinning mechanically in its pure white disc in the centre of a scarlet rectangle, hundreds of them, like wheels in a vast machine, row upon row spinning all along the Tiergarten, even hanging from lampposts. And when she gets home, she'll want to know the meaning of this. She takes a shortcut and is cast into shadow as she veers down an alley, the slopey floor clip-clopping its response to her flapping feet. Then she emerges once again into the light, arrives breathless at her front door, and rings again, and finally the door is opened by Frau Schulz, and Rosa cries, "Schrippen im Anmarsch, here comes bread," and hurries up the polished staircase to give it to her mama. Frau Schulz shivers. rubs her shoulders, and shuts the door against the biting Berlin air. Rosa takes off her little coat and flings it over the banisters, and the maid gathers it up for her, following her pattering patent shoes into the spacious, high-ceilinged, high-windowed apartment full of air and light, with a fine fire roaring in the fireplace, and rugs imported from the Orient stretching luxuriantly underfoot, and blonde oak panels lining the walls to chest height. The breakfast things are all laid out beautifully, gleaming even, reflected in the mammoth gilt-edged mirror above the fireplace. Rosa hands the rolls to her mama and climbs up onto one of the high-backed chairs with the stripes that she likes, looking intently at Papa, and what she really wants to know is, what's the meaning of this? She holds out her hand, displaying the pin like a golden bullet. But Papa's not paying attention. He's talking to Mama, who is standing up with her hands on the back of her chair, rolling her eyes. "Come on now, Otto," she's saying, "come on." "But it's just not possible," says Papa. "The man's a hypocrite. However can he remain in his position as if nothing has happened?" "Ah, stop being so anxious," replies his wife. "Wilhelm is nothing but an honest policeman. Politics has nothing to do with his job." "Of course it does, Inga. The police force is riddled with politics. You saw how they behaved during the riots on the Versaillenstrasse. It's a matter of principle." "Really, Liebling, really. This will not last. That's what everybody is saying. You said so yourself. You shouldn't worry so." By this time, Rosa is sitting on her father's knee, her dress tumbling in a fan over the edge of her seat, tugging at his slippery necktie, and he is benignly swatting her hands away. "Well, at least now we have Schrippen," he says. "A morning without Schrippen is almost as bad as a morning without tea. I need an entire pot of coffee this morning," says Inga, "after last night." Last night. Rosa suddenly remembers. It had been forgotten along with her dreams, but now it all comes back. Woken by a commotion outside, she got up, straightened her nightdress, and padded along the dark wooded hall into the drawing room. Papa and Mama were standing side by side at the window, their hands clasped behind their backs, gazing down at the Wilhelmstrasse, where a flickering ocean of flaming torches could be seen, and marching music and drums could dimly be heard, together with the roar of massed voices. Papa passed his hand over his sleek hair and said, "One cannot pretend that this new Reichschancellor is not bad news. But in reality, my dear, he's only a figurehead. He cannot survive very long." At this point, he drew the curtains in a strange sort of way, and Mama lit a cigarette. Rosa got a funny feeling behind her knees and crept back to bed, where she burrowed into the blankets and, to the sound of her parents' voices, fell into a fitful sleep.